You walk past a Monoprix in Paris today. The supermarket looks normal. Glass doors, bright lights, rows of checkout lanes. But beneath the floors, behind the walls, there runs a network that once held millions. Tubes, pneumatic tubes. The same technology that moved telegrams in 1853 now moves cash envelopes from registers to vaults at 25 feet per second through pipes no wider than 4 inches. One crew figured out that the weakest point in a fortress is not the door, it's the supply line. They didn't need dynamite, they didn't need blowtorches, they needed a drill and a vacuum cleaner from any hardware store. Between 2006 and 2010, a gang hit 15 Monoprix stores across Paris and surrounding communes. They walked away with 600,000 euros, over $800,000, 15 hits, 4 years, never caught. The press called them the gang à l'aspirateur, the vacuum gang. This is how they did it. The carriers enter pneumatic tubes. Suction pulls them through the network at speeds up to 7.6 meters per second. The tubes converge near a central safe room. The carriers drop into a receiver. The cash goes into the vault. The system is efficient. It keeps large amounts of cash off the floor. It reduces the risk of armed robbery at the register. But it has one flaw, the tubes themselves. Pneumatic tube systems run on negative pressure. A vacuum pump at the receiving end creates suction. The difference between atmospheric pressure outside the tube and the low pressure inside drives the carriers forward. Most retail systems use tubes with nominal diameters between 50 millimeters and 160 millimeters. That's 2 to 6 inches. The pipes are usually plastic or metal. They snake through walls. They run under floors. They travel distances up to 70 meters in a typical store. The system monitors each send electronically, but the pipes themselves, exposed in back corridors, in stockrooms, in service areas where no customer ever walks. The gang realized this. They realized the safe was impenetrable. The vault door was steel. The room was alarmed. The surveillance was constant. But the tubes were just tubes. No one knows which store. The gang stayed quiet. They entered after hours. They disabled the alarm. They found the tube network near the safe. They drilled a hole, a single penetration point, large enough to fit the nozzle of a commercial-grade vacuum cleaner. They turned it on. Cash envelopes began moving through the breach. The vacuum pulled them out of the system. The carriers couldn't drop into the safe because they never made it that far. The gang collected the envelopes. They left. The store discovered the loss the next morning. The police were called. The investigation began, but the thieves wore ski masks. They left no fingerprints. They took the cash and disappeared into the city. Monoprix did not issue a public statement. Break in through an emergency exit or service door. Locate the pneumatic tube junction near the safe room. Drill into the pipe. Attach the vacuum. Wait. The cash travels to you. No safe cracking, no explosives, no violence, just suction. The second robbery netted tens of thousands of euros. Again, the thieves wore masks. Again, they vanished. The Paris police opened an investigation, but they had no leads, no names, no faces. Just grainy CCTV footage of 2 figures in black balaclavas moving through dimly lit stockrooms. The footage showed the drill, it showed the vacuum, it showed the method, but it didn't show who. Also, this script is researched and factual, using sources from Le Parisien newspaper published September 22, 2010, which interviewed police sources directly involved in the investigation, and Time magazine's reporting on September 24, 2010, which cited both French judicial police records and Le Monde newspaper's coverage of the gang's pattern. Now back to the information. By 2008, the count was 7 stores, 7 robberies, same gang, same technique. Each time they refined the operation. They learned which stores had easier access. They learned the timing. Most Monoprix locations closed between 10 and 11 p.m. The safe room staff left shortly after. The building was empty until 6 a.m. That gave the thieves 8 hours. But they didn't need 8 hours. They needed 30 minutes. Drill the hole. 10 minutes. Attach the vacuum. 2 minutes. Let it run. 15 minutes. Disconnect. Clean up. Leave. 30 minutes total. In and out. One store in the 18th arrondissement of Paris lost 45,000 euros in a single night. The thieves drilled into the main convergence point where all the tubes from 12 checkout lanes met. Every carrier passing through that junction got pulled into the vacuum. 120 cash envelopes in 20 minutes. The store didn't discover the breach until morning when the safe room staff noticed the carriers weren't arriving. They found the hole. They found drill shavings on the floor. They found nothing else. The thieves always worked in pairs. One handled the drill, and the other operated the vacuum. They communicated with hand signals. No voices, no phones, no radios. They wore gloves. They wore dark clothing. They moved with efficiency. No panic, no hesitation. This was professional. The police suspected inside knowledge, someone who understood how pneumatic tube systems worked, someone who knew the layout of Monoprix stores, someone who knew the schedules. But they had no suspects. Monoprix refused to comment publicly. The company did not change its security measures. The pneumatic tube systems continued to operate. Local papers in Paris covered it. Tech blogs picked it up. The story went international. Hackaday ran an article on September 24th, 2010. Gizmodo covered it. The Mary Sue covered it. Time magazine covered it. The world watched as a gang robbed supermarkets with household appliances. It sounded absurd. It was absurd, but it worked. Monoprix store on Garibaldi Street in Saint-Ouen, a northern suburb of Paris. The store closed at 10 p.m. The staff left. The building was empty. The gang entered through the emergency exit. They disabled the alarm. They found the tube junction in the back corridor near the safe room. They drilled. They attached the vacuum. They waited. This time the haul was 70,000 euros, 150 cash envelopes. The vacuum sucked them out in 18 minutes. The thieves disconnected. They cleaned the area. They left. The store's CCTV captured everything, but the footage showed the same thing it always showed. Two figures in ski masks, black clothing, gloves, no faces, no identifiers. The only new detail was the vacuum itself. The police could see the model clearly, a commercial-grade wet-dry vacuum, the kind contractors use. Available at any hardware store in France, 1,200 watts of suction, 100 liters of capacity, 90 euros retail. That vacuum cleaner pulled 600,000 euros through a hole in a pipe over 4 years. Nothing came back. No tips, no witnesses, no suspects. The gang had been operating for 4 years, 15 stores, never a mistake, never a trace beyond the drill holes and the vacuum tracks. The French media called it brilliant. Security experts called it inevitable. Schneier on Security, a respected technology and security blog, covered the story on September 24th, 2010. The blog's readers debated the vulnerability. Some pointed out that pneumatic tube systems have one-way valves at the receiving end, but those valves only work if the system is pressurized. Once you drill a hole upstream, the pressure drops. The suction still works. The carriers still move. They just move toward the breach instead of the safe. Other readers noted that Monoprix could have installed flow sensors, pressure sensors, breach alarms, but retail environments prioritize cost. Every security measure is an expense. Monoprix calculated the risk. They accepted the loss. The difference drives the carriers. Most retail systems operate at differential pressures between 0.5 and 1 bar. That's 7 to 14.7 psi. Not a full vacuum, not even close, but enough. The carriers travel at speeds between 3 and 8 meters per second. That's 7 to 18 miles per hour, fast enough to move cash quickly, slow enough to avoid damaging the contents. The tubes are sealed. The carriers have rubber seals. The system is airtight until someone drills a hole. Once the hole exists, the vacuum pump still runs. But now there are 2 exit points, the safe and the breach. The carriers follow the path of least resistance. If the breach is upstream of the convergence point, the carriers heading toward the safe pass the breach. The vacuum pulls them out. The gang didn't need to understand fluid dynamics. They just needed to know that air moves toward low pressure, and cash moves with the air. The vacuum needs to match or exceed that rate to pull carriers from the stream. Commercial wet-dry vacuums designed for construction sites generate 150 to 200 CFM. Enough. The gang attached the vacuum nozzle to the drilled hole, probably used duct tape, maybe a rubber coupling. The seal didn't need to be perfect, just close enough. Once the vacuum engaged, the carriers approaching the breach got pulled into the nozzle. The envelopes dropped into the vacuum's collection tank. 12 minutes, 15 minutes, however long it took to empty the system. Then they disconnected. They left. The vacuum cleaner went back in the van. The cash went into bags. The gang drove away. The police couldn't track the purchases. Every hardware store in France sells drills. Every contractor owns a vacuum. The gang could have bought the tools anywhere. Cash, no records, no trail. Even if the police found the vacuum, it wouldn't help. No serial numbers logged, no receipts, no DNA inside a sealed vacuum tank. Nothing. The 18th, the 16th. Clichy, Saint-Denis, Boulogne-Billancourt, Saint-Ouen. The gang spread the hits. Never the same store twice. Never the same neighborhood twice in a row. They avoided patterns. They avoided routines. They stayed unpredictable. This takes planning. It takes reconnaissance. Someone scouted the stores. Someone mapped the tube networks. Someone identified the access points. Someone timed the staff. This wasn't random. This wasn't opportunistic. This was systematic. The police suspected a crew of at least 3, 2 for the job, 1 for logistics. But they had no proof. Just theory. Just guesses. Vacuum running. They saw him. One pulled a handgun. Not for shooting. For intimidation. They pointed. They gestured. The employee backed away. He left. He called the police. By the time officers arrived, the gang was gone. The employee gave a statement. 2 men, medium build, dark clothing. 1 carried a gun. That was new information. The gang was armed, but they never fired. Never threatened beyond showing the weapon. The police updated their profile. Armed robbery, higher severity, higher priority. But still no arrests. The employee couldn't identify them. Ski masks covered everything. The gun was generic, A semi-automatic pistol, common in France despite strict gun laws, untraceable, $53,000. Not bad for 30 minutes of work. Split between 2 people, maybe 3. Each walk away with $13,000 to $20,000 per job. Do it 15 times over 4 years. That's 200,000 to 300,000 euros per person. Tax-free, no bodies, no violence beyond one moment of intimidation, just vacuum cleaners and patience. The police had nothing. No DNA, no fingerprints. No witnesses who could identify the suspects. The CCTV showed technique, it showed method, it showed discipline. But it didn't show faces. 600,000 euros gone. 15 unsolved robberies. A supermarket chain that refused to upgrade security, and a gang that showed no signs of stopping. The police judiciaire issued a statement. They confirmed the investigation was ongoing. They confirmed the method. They confirmed the total loss. They asked for continued public assistance. They showed the September 20th footage from Saint-Ouen. They highlighted the vacuum. They highlighted the technique. They hoped someone would recognize something. No one did. Install new pipes. Add sensors. Add alarms. Add redundant security. That's hundreds of thousands of euros per store. Monoprix had hundreds of stores. The math didn't favor upgrades, so they absorbed the losses. They filed the insurance claims. They kept the systems running. The analysts were probably right. The police were frustrated. But corporations calculate risk differently than investigators. Monoprix calculated that 15 robberies over 4 years was acceptable. The gang calculated that 15 robberies was enough. 4 years, 0 arrests. The investigation remained open as of 2010. No updates have been publicly released since. No arrests were announced, no trials took place. The case is cold, the vacuum gang walked away. They're still out there. Or they retired, or they spent the money and moved on. We'll never know, because they never got caught. Retail security consultants cited it. The vulnerability was obvious in retrospect. Pneumatic tubes are just pipes. Pipes can be breached. The breach doesn't need to be sophisticated. It just needs to interrupt the flow. Once the flow is interrupted, the vacuum does the rest. The fix is simple. Install flow sensors. Install pressure sensors. Install breach detection. Route the tubes through secured conduits. Encase them in metal sleeves. Make them inaccessible. But all of that costs money. And most retailers didn't spend it, even after the vacuum gang. Even after 600,000 euros. The systems kept running. Some stores upgraded, most didn't. The calculation remained the same. Risk versus cost. The risk was low enough. The cost was high enough. Nothing changed. The vault was secure. The safe was secure. The alarms were secure, but the supply line? The tubes? No one thought about the tubes. The gang thought about the tubes. They saw what everyone else ignored. They exploited it. They did it 15 times. They walked away rich. That's not luck. That's observation. That's planning. That's execution. The police called them criminals. Security experts called them brilliant. Both were right. Let's talk about pneumatic tubes more broadly. The technology dates back to 1853. Josiah Latimer Clark patented the system that year in London. He connected the London Stock Exchange to the Electric Telegraph Company offices, 220 yards. Telegrams moved through tubes propelled by air pressure. The system worked. By 1880, London had 34 kilometers of pneumatic tube networks, 21 miles. Telegraph offices, government buildings, department stores. The technology spread, banks used it, retail stores used it, hospitals use it today. Blood samples travel through tubes at speeds up to 25 feet per second, 7.6 meters per second, the same speed that moved cash through Monoprix stores, the same speed that moved cash into a vacuum cleaner. The technology is simple, it's reliable, it's old, and it's vulnerable. Because it's just a tube, and tubes can be broken. You wait. The vacuum gang didn't wait, they drilled. But the principle is the same. Find the overlooked weakness, exploit it, disappear 15 times, 600,000 euros, 0 arrests. Maybe it was an insider. Maybe it was just good research, public building plans, supplier information, observation. You can learn a lot by watching. You can learn a lot by asking questions. Pneumatic tube systems are not secret. The companies that install them advertise. They publish technical specifications, tube diameter, flow rate, pressure differential, conveying speed. It's all public. The gang could have learned everything they needed without ever stepping inside a Monoprix. They could have called suppliers, asked technical questions, pretended to be a contractor, gathered data, built a plan, executed. No insider needed. Just patience and research. Someone noticed the pneumatic tubes. Someone recognized the vulnerability. That person studied the system. They visited stores. They watched employees. They noted when cash carriers entered the tubes. They timed the frequency. A busy checkout sends carriers every 15 to 20 minutes during peak hours. That's 3 to 4 carriers per hour per lane. A 12-lane store generates 36 to 48 carriers per hour. Each carrier holds between 2,000 and 5,000 euros depending on denomination mix. Do the math. A store processing 100,000 euros in daily cash sends that money through the tubes in manageable packets. 40 carriers at 2,500 euros each. Those carriers travel the same route, checkout to convergence point. Convergence point is safe. The convergence point is the vulnerability. That's where all lanes meet. That's where one drill hole intercepts everything. The gang figured this out. They didn't target individual checkout tubes. Too inefficient. One tube serves one lane. Drill there and you intercept one lane's worth of cash. Maybe 3 carriers in 30 minutes. 7,000 euros. Not worth the risk. But the convergence point, that intercepts 12 lanes, 40 carriers in 30 minutes, 100,000 euros. Worth the risk. Worth the planning. Worth the execution. The vacuum can't engage properly. Too slow and you waste time. You increase exposure. You create more opportunity for discovery. The gang drilled at medium speed. Clean holes, smooth edges, proper diameter. The vacuum nozzle fits snugly. No gap, no air leak, maximum suction. They'd practiced this. You don't get it right 15 times in a row without practice. Somewhere before 2006, they drilled test holes, maybe in their own space, maybe in abandoned buildings, maybe in practice tubes they built themselves. They refined the technique, they measured the time, they optimized the process. Then they applied it. First store, success. Second store, success. By the 5th store, they were experts. By the 15th, they were legends. Available everywhere. They analyzed the vacuum models from the CCTV, wet-dry construction vacuums. Common. Available everywhere. They checked hardware store purchases. Thousands of drills sold every month in Paris. Thousands of vacuums sold every year. No way to narrow it down. They checked rental records. No unusual patterns. They checked vehicle registrations near the crime scenes. Hundreds of vehicles passed those locations. No vehicle appeared at multiple scenes. The gang used different routes, different vehicles, maybe different drivers. They varied everything except the method. The consistency helped police understand the technique, but it didn't help them catch anyone. The investigators interviewed Monoprix employees, current staff, former staff, anyone who might know the tube layouts, anyone who might have shared information, anyone who might be involved. Nothing. Everyone had alibis. Everyone passed background checks. Everyone seemed legitimate. The police even considered the possibility of multiple gangs copying each other, but the technique was too consistent. The timing was too similar. The stores were too specifically chosen. One gang, one plan, 15 executions. Find anything that doesn't match reported income. The accountants analyzed transactions in Paris and surrounding areas. They looked for patterns, large cash purchases, property acquisitions, vehicle purchases, luxury goods, travel expenses, anything that might indicate windfall income. They found thousands of suspicious transactions. Paris has millions of residents. Many deal in cash. Many make large purchases. Many buy property. Many travel. The accountants couldn't isolate the gang. The money was either spent slowly enough to blend in, or it was hidden outside the banking system. Probably hidden. Smart criminals don't deposit 600,000 euros in cash. They spend it slowly. They buy assets that hold value. Gold, jewelry, art, real estate, and other names. They wait years before enjoying the money. The accountants found nothing useful. The money disappeared into the underground economy. It's still there, circulating, invisible. A store in Belgium reported suspicious damage to their pneumatic tubes in 2008. Nothing stolen. The breach was discovered before any operation occurred. Were these connected to the French gang? Unlikely. The Spanish hit was amateur. Sloppy hole, poor vacuum seal, low take, different profile entirely. The Belgium incident might have been reconnaissance, someone scouting the method, someone who didn't follow through. Or it might have been unrelated damage, construction accident, maintenance error. The police couldn't confirm. They added the incidents to their files. They noted the similarities, but they couldn't prove connection. The vacuum gang remained a uniquely French phenomenon, a Paris problem, a Monoprix problem, and a problem that stopped as mysteriously as it started. 4 years. That's a long operational window. Most criminal enterprises collapse faster. Someone talks, someone gets caught, someone makes a mistake. The vacuum gang made no mistakes, or they made mistakes we don't know about, but they never got caught making them. 15 successful operations, 0 captures. That's a 97% success rate if you count any investigation as a partial failure. But from the gang's perspective, 100%, 15 attempts, 15 successes, 15 payouts. The only failure was stopping. But maybe stopping was the plan. Maybe they hit their number. 600,000 euros. Split 3 ways, 200,000 each. Cash, untraceable. Walk away, start a business, buy property, live quietly. Never get caught because you never get greedy. That's discipline. That's intelligence. That's how you survive in crime. You set a limit, you stick to it, you quit while you're ahead. The vacuum gang had all 4. That's rare. That suggests experience. Maybe not in robbery specifically, but in planning, in project management, in understanding risk. These weren't teenagers. These weren't desperate junkies. These were calculated professionals. 30 years old minimum, maybe 40. Old enough to understand consequences, young enough to execute physically, educated enough to research the systems, connected enough to acquire tools, disciplined enough to stop. That's intentional randomization. That's understanding how investigations work. Detectives look for patterns. Patterns become predictions. Predictions become traps. The gang offered no patterns. They hit when opportunity aligned with preparation. They didn't force timing. They didn't rush. Store closed, staff gone, access clear, go. Otherwise wait. Try another night, another store. Patience wins. 15 times they had patience. 15 times patience paid off. Drop pieces in the Seine, scatter parts across the city, or keep everything sterile from the start. Gloves during purchase, gloves during use, gloves during cleaning, gloves during disposal. Never bare hands, never direct contact. The police never found the tools, which means the gang either destroyed them perfectly, or kept them perfectly clean, or both. That's professional, that's trained, that's experienced. Consider also the gang's knowledge of retail operations. They knew when stores received cash deliveries, they knew when safes were fullest. Most retail locations receive cash on Monday mornings. Employees need change for the week. The safe holds maximum currency Monday afternoon through Wednesday. By Friday, much of the cash has been deposited to banks. The safe is lighter. The gang probably hits stores on Monday or Tuesday nights. Maximum cash in the system. Maximum carriers in the tubes. Maximum take per operation. The police reports didn't specify hit dates precisely, but the pattern suggests weekday operations, never weekends. Retail security increases on weekends. More staff, more activity, more risk. The gang understood this. They chose low-risk timing. They maximized reward. They minimized exposure. That's optimization. That's planning. That's intelligence applied to crime. All of this came after the vacuum gang. They forced the industry to adapt. They exposed a vulnerability that existed since the 1850s. For over 150 years, pneumatic tubes moved materials through pipes. For 150 years, those pipes were vulnerable to breach. No one thought about it. No one exploited it. Until 2006, until Paris, until Monoprix, until someone looked at a tube and saw opportunity. The industry changed because of that. Banks changed, hospitals changed, retailers changed, all because a gang drilled 15 holes and stole 600,000 euros. That's influence, that's legacy. The vacuum gang changed retail security worldwide, and no one knows their names. Once Time magazine covers your robberies, once Gizmodo writes about your method, once the story goes global, you become a target. Interpol gets involved. International pressure increases. The investigation expands. Smart criminals read the room. They see the coverage. They recognize the danger. They stop. They disappear. They let the story fade. Years pass. The case goes cold. The investigators move on. You're free. You're rich. You're smart enough to enjoy it quietly. That's the best outcome for any criminal. Not getting caught and not getting killed. The vacuum gang achieved both. They won. You don't advertise your security measures. You don't tell criminals what you fixed. You don't give them a roadmap to the new vulnerabilities. Monoprix learned that lesson. They stayed silent before the robberies. They stayed silent after. That silence served them. It denied the gang publicity. It denied them fame. It kept the story contained. Most people in France never heard about the vacuum gang. Most Monoprix customers never knew. The story was big in tech circles, in security circles, in media circles. But for average shoppers, it never registered. That was probably intentional too. Monoprix didn't want panic. They didn't want customers questioning safety. They absorbed the loss. They filed insurance. They moved on. Business as usual. That's how corporations handle crises. Quietly, efficiently, with minimal public exposure. It remains open, technically, but open cases without leads don't get resources. Investigators move to active cases. The files sit in archives, digital records, physical evidence in storage. The drill holes were photographed. The vacuum was described. The footage was saved, but no one looks at it anymore. Unless the gang strikes again, unless someone confesses, unless new evidence surfaces, the case sits, it waits, it gathers dust. That's how most unsolved crimes end. Not with a bang, not with a revelation, just with silence, just with time. The vacuum gang is now history, a footnote, a case study, a story told in security conferences and true crime circles. 15 robberies, 600,000 euros, 0 arrests. The perfect crime. Except for one thing. They had to stop. They had to walk away. Because continuing meant getting caught. And getting caught meant prison. So they stopped, they disappeared, they won, but they could never tell anyone. That's the price. That's the trade. Freedom for silence, wealth for anonymity, success for invisibility. The vacuum gang paid that price, and they're still out there, somewhere, living quietly, spending carefully, remembering the days when a drill and a vacuum cleaner made them richer than most people will ever be. And no one will ever know who they are. Here's the final detail that closes this story. In 2011, a pneumatic tube system supplier in Germany published a technical bulletin. The bulletin addressed security vulnerabilities in retail cash handling systems. It recommended tube encasement. It recommended breach detection sensors. It recommended pressure monitoring. It recommended redundant alarms. The bulletin cited recent incidents in France. It didn't name Monoprix. It didn't name the vacuum gang, but everyone in the industry knew what incidents they meant. The bulletin included installation costs. Tube encasement added 15,000 euros per store. Breach sensors added 8,000 euros per store. Pressure monitoring added 5,000 euros per store. Total upgrade cost per store, 28,000 euros. Monoprix had 400 stores at the time. Total cost to secure the entire chain, 11 million euros. The vacuum gang stole 600,000 euros. The fix cost 18 times more than the loss. Monoprix did the math. They didn't upgrade every store, they upgraded some. They accepted the risk on others. The bulletin proved what the gang already knew. The system was vulnerable, and fixing it was expensive. Too expensive. That vulnerability still exists today, in stores across France, across Europe, across the world. Pneumatic tubes still move cash. The tubes still run through walls, the tubes are still accessible, and somewhere, in some city, someone else is thinking about drill bits and vacuum cleaners. The story never really ends. It just waits for the next chapter. The next crew, the next 15 robberies, the next 600,000 euros, the next gang that sees what everyone else ignores, the next group that understands the simple truth. The vault is strong, but the tubes are just tubes, and tubes can be broken.